All right, hey guys, Josh B. Craft here again, 2mm shift. We are going to talk about kind of a cool one today. This is a little tactic for you that you can use conversationally. You can use this on social media. You can use this if you're writing blog posts, if you're writing a book. You name it, this is going to work really well as a way of influencing and kind of keeping people's guard down a little bit while engaging curiosity and all of that. And it's a very simple concept. This isn't deep, complex psychology here. What I call this is called deferred authority. And here's the basic premise, right? If I'm going to tell you something is factually true, right? Like, let's say that I was going to tell you that a certain medication worked really well, right? I could say, hey, aspirin's really good for headaches, right? Now, maybe that's true, right? You heard me say it. Maybe that's true. Watch this. This is the deferred authority trick in motion, right? Hey, I was watching TV the other day and Dr. Oz said that aspirin's really good for headaches. That's it. That's the whole thing. All you do is defer the authority of what you believe, right? You're communicating what you believe to somebody. Aspirin's really good for headaches. You defer the authority away from you to something else that is objectively authoritative. And what happens there is people take that as though it's them saying it instead of you saying it, but you get credit for the one telling them, right? Kind of a cool little way to do this. So if you practice this little trick in real time, it doesn't matter what it is, right? This is the reason that award companies exist, at least in part, right? Imagine if you remember a few years ago, I don't know if you see them as much anymore. I don't see commercials anymore with streaming services and all of that, but I remember back when I was seeing more commercials on TV, you would see like General Motors would win these J.D. Power and Associates awards, right? And it would be like the J.D. Power and Associates award for best design. That is a way of deferring authority to bring somebody's attention and ultimately desire back to a product, right? So you can imagine a car salesman saying, hey, this is the new Chevy Silverado. This was J.D. Power and Associates pick for best design in 2024, whatever, right? That is a level of authority that gets transferred in the conversation, and it's not you convincing somebody that this is true. It's you telling them what somebody else said was true that happens to be qualified to say that, right? So another example of this, like if I was telling you about a sales tactic, let's say I was going to say, hey, like, one of the best ways to close is to use this process called looping, where, as soon as somebody brings up an objection, you handle the objection and then loop back to the core benefit for them and then try a close again, right? Great. You might take that and go, oh, that's kind of interesting. Well, that's Jordan Belfort's methodology, right? Say, hey, Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street, he's got this cool trick he does in sales called looping. And what it essentially is when you go to do a trial close and somebody puts up another objection, you handle that objection in real time and then loop back to the actual benefits of how it's going to impact that person's life with the new information from the objection and close again, right? And you loop through that and loop through that and loop through that until you get the deal closed. It's Jordan Belfort's thing. It's like one of the main things that he teaches, right? That feels very differently than me trying to tell you that. So what's the real advantage to this besides it feeling differently? The real advantage is if you're in a situation where you need to influence at all and you're coming across as the full authority, that's okay if you got the credentials to do it. It's okay if you've got the third-party validation to be able to do that, right? And it depends on how you're introduced. If you're on a stage and somebody introduced you on the stage, you've got all the credibility in the world, right? If you're on social media, maybe you don't have as much credibility there because you're in a sea full of other people with credibility. And the way that you gain that credibility is you show people that you're following the trusted sources. So when you say something, it implies that it was something that you learned from other people who were qualified to say it first, right? And now you have your own spin on it. In fact, this is so good. There's a number of social media personalities that do nothing but these reaction videos for deferred authority, right? They actually come in and sometimes they're trumping that deferred authority and sometimes they're validating it, right? There'll literally be a clip of like Jordan Peterson will say something really smart and really great. And then somebody will say, in my experience, I've been in business for 30 some years, and in my experience, what Jordan's saying is absolutely true. In fact, I'd take it a step further and say XYZ on top of it, right? That's a really valid way to do social media in today's day and age, because you're leveraging that other person's authority, their social media attention, and you're just adding your spin to it. And what it does is allow you to impart your specific wisdom without somebody feeling like you're pushing it down their throat, right? If I just come on and say, hey, listen to me, I'm going to tell you some things that'll change your life. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. If I say, hey, did you see the new thing that Jordan Peterson did the other day? No, let me tell you, this is what he said. Now let me tell you what I think about it. It's an entirely different conversation, and the psychology is completely different. So this deferred authority tactic works for all sorts of stuff. It's really good for statistical data. It's really good for talking about processes and shortcuts. In fact, this entire 2 millimeter shift thing, believe it or not, I think the first person to talk about the idea of a 2 millimeter shift, right, which is, if you can imagine, you make a decision or a set of actions and you cascade that out over a timeline, right? If you made just a 2 millimeter shift in whatever those decisions or actions were and cascade on that same timeline, you end up in 2 different points, drastically different points, right? I think the first person to kind of characterize it that way was Tony Robbins, right? So I could say something like, hey, Tony Robbins talks about 2 millimeter shifts as some of the most important things that you can discover within anything that you're working on, because when you cascade that out over time, that trajectory can be a massive difference in your income, in your fulfillment, in your ability to execute whatever those processes are. And all it takes is a slight bit of understanding, a slight bit of activity and adjustment, and you can predict that you'll be in a different world, in a better world going forward, right? That's basically true, right? That's where this whole thing, like, that's the first time I remember hearing the idea of the 2 millimeter shift referenced was Tony referencing it, right? And of course, many other people have referenced it since. It was probably decades ago that he referenced it that way. And it was just a cool metaphor that he came up with. And now it's something that I thought was cool enough. I decided to call my stuff 2 millimeter shift. And that's really, like, for the people that know me, that's what I'm known for. It's like helping create those little moments of clarity and those little moments of being able to take a small step in another direction that looks almost the same, but it's just different enough. And over time, you know, my students and people that I've coached and whatnot, they've all got drastically different results because we shifted little things like that. That's all that it is. So because I'm kind of known for that, I adopted the 2 millimeter shift metaphor as a brand, right? And I can tell you that it's an authoritative thing because Tony Robbins said it first, right? And I'm sure Grant Cardone has mentioned it. And I know people like Chris Voss and Jordan Peterson and whatnot. Like, I know that these things have come up, at least the idea, the concept, right? So that's the point. Defer authority and then let that be the thing that carries your message through. It's very simple. Don't overthink it. Don't, I probably talked too long about it just because I'm pretty long-winded on these things. It is as simple as saying, hey, such and such authoritative person said such and such thing, and here's what I think. That's it. That's the whole framework, right? So do that. See how that changes the way that people perceive your communication. See how that affects the way that you're able to deliver other content, and even give you more clarity on your own things that you're saying, right? Because it's okay to give credit to somebody else. They deserve it. They worked hard for it, and if they impacted you, well, dang it, they should get credit, because as you impact people, it'd be nice if they give you credit too, and so on and so forth. So that's the deal. Try deferred authority, see how it works out for you, and I'll see you on the next 2 millimeter shift.